The baby had been home for 3 days when the Bernese Mountain Dog decided he would not be sleeping anywhere other than beside the bassinet. His name was Bruno. He was 4 years old and approximately 108 pounds, and he had spent the first 4 years of his life as the center of a two-person household's attention. Then there was a baby, and the baby had been in a hospital for a week. And then the baby was home in a bassinet in the master bedroom, and Bruno pressed his back against the side of the bassinet and declined to be moved. Elena and Tomas had tried. The first night they relocated him 4 times. Each time they settled him on his bed across the room. He waited with the patience of a dog that understands waiting. And then, at the point when both humans had drifted back towards sleep, he was beside the bassinet again. On the 4th night, Tomas said, "Let him stay." Elena, who was a labor and delivery nurse with 12 years of experience and a specific professional skepticism about the folk wisdom that dogs and newborns should be monitored together at all times, thought about this for a moment and agreed. Not because she had changed her clinical position, because Bruno had pressed himself against the bassinet again and was looking at her with an expression she could not easily characterize, except to say that it was not the expression of a dog who wanted attention. It was the expression of a dog who was working. If you stay for stories about what animals sense before we do, you are in the right place. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Her daughter's name was Ines. She had arrived 3 weeks early, healthy by all measures, discharged after a standard NICU observation period with clear lungs and good color, and a follow-up appointment scheduled for the following week. She was eating, she was gaining weight at the appropriate rate, she was doing everything a 3-week early baby is supposed to do. She was also, on the morning of day 5 at home, breathing differently. Elena noticed it while she was nursing. A subtle change in the pattern, a slight irregularity in the rhythm that she might have attributed to the common respiratory irregularities of newborns, if she had not spent 12 years listening to newborn breath, and developing the specific attentiveness to pattern that those 12 years build. She listened for 3 minutes. The irregularity was not consistent, but it was recurring. Bruno had his nose pressed against the side of the bassinet, which he was doing frequently, but he was also doing something new. Every time the breathing changed pattern, his head came up. Then it returned to normal and his head went back down. He was responding to the irregularity in real time. She called the pediatrician at 7:15 in the morning. She described what she was hearing. The pediatrician, who knew that Elena was an 50 and 500 nurse, and weighted her clinical observations accordingly, told her to come in that morning. At the appointment, the pediatrician listened to Ines's chest for a long time. She ordered a pulse oximetry reading. She sent them to the Children's Hospital for a chest X-ray. The radiograph showed a small area of focal atelectasis in the lower right lobe, a region of partial collapse, common in early preterms, and often self-resolving but capable of progressing if not monitored. In Ines's case, it had been developing since before discharge and had reached the point where her body was compensating in ways that were subtly audible to someone who knew what to listen for. Has your dog ever done something that made no sense until it was the only thing that made sense? Tell us in the comments. These stories deserve to be heard. She was readmitted for 3 days of respiratory support and observation. She came home again with clear lungs and a follow-up schedule. And she came home to Bruno pressing his back against the bassinet in the master bedroom. The pediatrician who managed Ines's readmission was interested in the dog. She asked Elena about the behavior, the nose against the bassinet, the head lifting in response to pattern changes. She said, "We don't have good data on this, but there is a reasonable hypothesis. Respiratory distress in infants produces changes in the chemical composition of exhaled breath. Elevated carbon dioxide, altered moisture content, Changes in the VOC profile of the air around the infant. A dog with a sufficiently sensitive olfactory system, maintaining close proximity, would register these changes before they became visible or audible to a human observer. Elena thought about Bruno, pressed against the bassinet in the dark, lifting his head when the breathing changed. She had spent 12 years learning to listen to newborns. She had good ears. She had not caught this in the first 4 days. Bruno had. Every guardian deserves to be recognized, even the ones who never asked for anything in return. If stories like this matter to you, subscribe so you never miss the next one. Inez was 8 months old now. She had met every developmental milestone, had had no further respiratory concerns, and had developed a particular fondness for grabbing Bruno's ear and examining it with the focused interest of someone conducting a study. Bruno tolerated this without complaint. He had settled into his role in the house with the quiet certainty of a dog who knew what he was for, which was apparently to be present, to pay attention, and to lift his head when something changed that the humans had not yet caught. Elena watched them some mornings when Inez was nursing, and Bruno had arranged himself beside them in his characteristic pressed against the nearest surface posture. She thought about the morning she had called the pediatrician. She thought about the 12 years of listening she had behind her that had made her confident enough to make that call at 7:15 in the morning. She also thought about the 4 nights before it when Bruno had refused to sleep anywhere except where he could press his nose against the place where Inez breathed. She was not sure in the end whose ears had caught it. She thought probably it had been both of them, working without coordination or language at different frequencies. And the thing they had both been listening for had been the same thing.